I have always loved art, but I was never blessed as an artist with any artistic ability whatsoever. I was lucky enough that I grew up in community theater. I loved that connection that you form with an audience, knowing that we are all laughing or crying or smiling or experiencing this thing together because of what's happening on stage. I just absolutely loved it. So I went to a performing arts high school. I was a theater major in college. This was my goal. And then I met my very first boyfriend. And I got swept away. I knew very quickly that I wanted a family with that man, and that this thing I was doing was probably not going to support that family. So I decided I'm going to become a physical therapist, which concerned and surprised my parents because the two things I hated the most at that point in my life were science and exercise. So the irony is not lost on me. But I knew better, so I gave up my scholarship, I switched majors, transferred colleges, and I became a physical therapist. And I did marry that man. And we had 2 children and a dog and a house in suburbia. I mean, we had everything. But underneath all of it, there was violence at home. He would yell, he would threaten me, he would throw furniture, break things that belonged to me and our children. He would steal from me. He would embarrass me in front of my family, isolate me from my friends, and at night, he would take from my body whatever he wanted, regardless of what I wanted. And somehow, he convinced me it was all my fault. But I loved him, and I stayed. Until about 8 weeks after our second son was born, I discovered he had been hiding an addiction to heroin and cocaine. And that, to me, was the last thing. I could not do it anymore. I didn't want it in front of my children. And in December of 2017, I filed for divorce. And what happened after that was a horrible cycle of rehab and relapse and rehab and relapse and rehab and relapse that drew out our divorce until June of 2019, when it was all finalized and I got full custody of both boys. In 2021, he overdosed and died. That is the worst part of my story. Let's all take a deep breath, because if you don't need it, I do. Okay? Now we're going to flash forward about a year, and I want everybody to close your eyes. I promise we're going to a happy place, okay? You are on a tropical island, resting in a hammock. You can hear the waves, but they are a safe distance. The sky is the brightest blue you have ever seen. The sun just beats warmly on your face, and the thing you hear the most is the palm trees above you going wish, 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 wish. Can we open our eyes? Everybody relaxed? Maybe? Yeah. Well, in that moment, I was having a massive anxiety attack. And as the tears just came streaming down my face and I struggled to control my own breathing, I realized it was time for me to aggressively pursue my own healing. So I started on medication, I went to therapy, and I learned about self-care, and that for me, this meant I had to take that little creative person I had shoved and start pulling her out of the box. Now, I had remarried since then, so jumping into rehearsals 4 or 5 nights a week was not an option. We now had 4 children between the 2 of us. So I did the next best thing, and I bought an adult paint-by-number set. Because I have no artistic talent whatsoever, but I can follow a good set of directions. So thanks to the numbers 1 through 24, I have this beautiful painting of a ballerina who sits behind me at my desk. And I danced for 10 years when I was younger, but I never got to the level that this woman is. She is up on point. She is in this beautiful red swaying costume with poised arms and grace and confidence. She is an artist. And I get lots of compliments on her when I'm in meetings because people see her behind my shoulder. And I'm quick to remind them, just slow your roll, she's a paint by number. I mess up stick figures. Let's just remember this. So as I started to really explore my own creativity, I discovered I wanted to tell my story because I didn't want people who have experienced something like me to feel alone. The isolation is where it holds its power. And as soon as we take that away, it's not so scary anymore. So I decided to try telling my story through stand-up comedy. Again, an odd choice. But, I got to my first stand-up comedy class because I'm a class person. And I told the story of how I got into health policy. And the whole room just busted out laughing. And I immediately remembered how much I loved that connection with people. And I started to wonder to myself, I speak on health policy regularly. It's part of my job, and I'm known for making it funny and relatable. Does that make me... I eventually decided no. Telling funny stories about Medicare and penis pumps does not make you an artist. So then I started putting words and emotions down on the paper in fragments that I refer to as poetry. And I had the privilege of sharing them at an open mic to raise awareness on domestic violence. I started writing a one-person show, working on my memoir, and I returned to my great love of reading. And I eventually got to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, in which he says, the recovery from trauma involves the restoration of executive function, and with it, self-confidence and the capacity for playfulness and creativity. And it occurred to me that that is what I had been experiencing. I am not Picasso, I am not Mozart or Alvin Ailey or Rembrandt. I am not some great talent that just shapes how you see the world. Or maybe I am. The spoken word is a very challenging medium, but I speak and I am